the authoring components only run on Microsoft Windows. There's no Mac clients available, and you require Java runtime version 8, which needs to be enabled on your Windows instance. And then just one setting that you need to go and update in the Java control panel is enable Java content for browsers and web start applications. Okay, so there are two main instances or authoring components within the SAP Enable now, and that is the Open Producer, or the producer, and the instant producer. So the instant producer is a very light simulation capturing tool. On a typical SAP Enable Now project, we would assign instant producer to a subject matter expert or to a functional consultant busy developing or configuring a specific SAP module. We will then ask that SME or functional consultant to capture one or two simulations that they are the super users in, and then once they've captured their simulations, that will get synced back to the manager instance, and a content author will open those captured simulations created in Instant Producer in Producer, and will then do the editing. The alternative is to use Producer for the end-to-end process. So from capturing, editing, and publishing. Okay, so I'm not going to run through Instant Producer. All the things that you will see in Producer are exactly the same functionalities that are available in Instant Producer. So when a content author has access to Producer, they will click on the Open Producer link. A Java application will download. Once they've downloaded the Java application, or once they've opened up the application, the actual Producer application will open up. Okay. So when an author connects for the first time, they will not necessarily see the BAE work area infrastructure. I've just downloaded it already this morning just to save some time, because it is about a 20-minute download, depending on your internet speed, so or your connection. So what a user would typically do on first install, or every time they open up Producer, as a rule, they will go to server work area, they will go to check out objects, and they will ensure that they check out the entire BAE work area. Once they click on OK, the server will connect with the server, or the application will connect with the server rather, and it will download any new projects that have been created. So you'll see on my instance now, there was step 9 out of 9. So there were 9 objects that were either created or changed. That is now syncing with my version of Producer on my local machine, which was not, on my local work area. So as a best practice, authors need to connect to the server work area to download any new application or any new projects created, but also any new resources that might have changed, or resources that might have changed. I'll jump into the resources now. Any questions on that first install or opening up the application? So it's very important that from Manager, they click on the Open Producer link. Producer opens up. On first connection, or every time you open up Producer, you click on server work area, and you need to go on check out objects to download any new objects. Any questions regarding that process?
No, I don't think so for me. Thanks.
Okay, fairly straightforward.
Hi, I have a question.
Yes.
If there are any new objects added by someone else, then will there be any notification, or does the user needs to do it like best practice? Is it like once every week, or every time they start up?
So as a rule of thumb, yes, if you use Workflow, you would get a notification that there's a new object that has been created and assigned to you. So then you can log in and check out objects. But as a best practice rule, every time I open up Producer, the first thing I do is I go check out the objects just to make sure that all the objects are checked out. And then you'll see if you go and try and do it again, it will say all server objects have been checked out already. So there's nothing to do or nothing new to check out.
Great, thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so I know we covered this in the last section. I'm just going to run through it again from the producer side. So we have the BAE main work area. This work area is divided up into 3 main parts. So we have got the resources. The resources govern all the application standards that we use to record our simulations or to create content. There's 1 or 2 settings that we change on initial producer setup when you do it for the first time. I will run through those in a second. And then we have the content work area. So within the content work area, we have the toolbox with all the templates and media in. We have the authoring guidelines with the training material in. Then we've got our content creation area which we use to create content, which is not available to the end users or to the learners. And we have our course library, which has got the content in which is currently live to learners, which learners can access. And then just for temporary now, we've got the BAE training folder, which we used with the HR team to do a bit of training. And we've got unsorted and local trash. So unsorted is any simulation that currently doesn't have a place within the content creation area. So I can see some users have been practicing a bit, which is okay. And we have local trash. So anything that you've deleted while you've created content will sit in your local trash. And then you can restore these local trash items to wherever it needs to be in the main work area, or you as a user has the option to empty your local trash. So that's basically from a content perspective, what is housed within the BAE work area. Okay. So
sorry, just quickly, can I ask what the relevance of the flags are? So is that the intended audience? So I saw the UK and the US flag in there.
Okay. Yeah, so the flags are basically the language. So it indicates which language that content was created in. So it's currently in UK language. If we later go into translations, then we can change the language for those specific objects to whichever language is required.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so on first install, and we went through this with the HR guys last week. There's 1 or 2 settings which users need to just change before they can start generating content. And the first thing is within recording dictionaries. So the recording dictionary governs the sentences that we record when recording an actual application. So click on the button versus click the button. So we've actually spent some time before Project Spring to customize that dictionary. So you'll see that there's a BAE specific dictionary. By default, SAP Enable now will use the simulation dictionary as the default dictionary. So you'll see it will be bolded by default when the users open up the application for the first time. So what users will need to do is just go into recording dictionaries, select the BAE Systems Recording Dictionary, and just click on the Set as Default button to change the default recording dictionary. So that's one setting that they need to change, which is documented in the presentation. And then they just need to go to Tools. This is more personal preference. Something that I advise that we do is when they go into Settings, Producer General, is maybe just to change their languages. So the application primary and secondary language will be English, United States, but the default language for spell check will be United Kingdom. or English United Kingdom, and we just need to enable the spell check. Okay. And then maybe just one thing from an IT perspective, which they can change, is their preferred internet browser. So they can either use the system default browser or they can fix it to Internet Explorer. I prefer the system default browser because my system default browser on my Windows is Google Chrome. Yep. So maybe just make a note of that. Okay. So any questions on the initial setup? So it's basically updating the recording dictionary, changing the default language for spell check to UK, and just switching on spell check. Any questions? Perfect. Okay. So once they've now created content, or once they've set up, we can now go into the authoring. So I'm going to use the BAE Enable Now training instance. So I'm not sure if you can remember from the last session that we have a couple of icon colors next to the the folders. So a blue cloud means that that object is currently still sitting on the server, and nobody is currently, or you are currently not editing that folder as an author. So what you need to do is you need to go and ask permissions to actually edit a folder. You can do that by right-clicking on the folder and selecting the Start Editing button, or simply click on the Start Editing button on the top right-hand side of the screen. So once I hit Start Editing, the server will go and check if anybody else is busy editing that folder, and you'll now see that I get a green pencil, which basically means that I am currently the author of that folder. So once I am the author of the folder, I can now go and create various objects within that folder. So if I would like to create a new group or a new folder, I can go and select the functionality. I can now go and change the name. So let's call it SAP Enable Now Simulations. And I could go and select the default language for this group. So if we were doing any translations, I could go and select Chinese, for instance, or if you scroll down, I can do Spanish or Russian. Okay, so we'll keep that on UK for now. And you can also save this folder or group to the server by default. I like to do that by default, then I know the content is starting to move onto the manager instance, but nothing stops you from creating your group structure and then submitting it or saving it to the manager interface once you are done creating your structure. Okay. So once I click on OK, you'll see that it will save the server to that group. And I've now got a green pencil automatically because I've created a group and I'm currently the editor. But you'll also notice now that on the parent folder, there's a purple star now, which basically means that there is changes made to that specific group or to that specific object, which has not been saved to the server. Okay. So you can go ahead and right click on that object and you can basically say, okay, for everything, okay, no, it's already saved. Oh, wait, wrong one. There we go. Okay, so I can now say, yep, save that change to the server. I can add in a status, or I can assign that to another user on the system, and I can add a comment. And once I'm done, I can say, cool, save to server, and it will turn again to a normal green pencil. Okay, so that's just from the editing notifications. Obviously, if we were using workflow for a specific object, I could then go and assign, if I just finish this one, I could go and change the status to say, okay, it's in progress currently, and I'm going to assign it to myself to say, okay, group created, and I can now click on finish editing, and that will be the status for that object. Any questions on the start editing and creating of a new object.
Just a quick one from me. So the icons that you explained, and I know you briefly touched on them before, where is the best place to get a breakdown of what each one means? Is it in existing guidance or the info center or somewhere?
Perfect. So I have actually created them for you guys in one of these presentations. There is a complete explanation of what the icons actually mean. I'll see if I can quickly find it after the session. I'll just show you where I put that in. I know it is in the HR presentation.
I'm sure it's in there. It looks very comprehensive. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it should be somewhere in here. But otherwise, I will just add it in. But it is in the HR presentation as well. Let's quickly just double check.
Okay, thank you. Just to follow on one from that, as I mentioned Info Center, I tried to access Info Center this week actually, and it re-prompted me for credentials that it didn't accept. Is there a reason why we couldn't get to Info Center? It appears to be outside of the tool.
No, you need to just, it won't be your same credentials. You need to go and create a separate account for Info Center.
Right, okay, all right.
Perfect. So there are the editing stages. So locked editing, modified, and keep for offline editing.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. Maybe just a quick one on Info Center. If you would like to access Info Center directly from the SAP Enable Now producer, the icon just sits up here, and you can navigate directly to Info Center. But you will need to create an account on Info Center unless you have an S user or a C user. You can use the same credentials. Okay. So once I've created my group, I am now going to go and reuse the project or the simulation template that we've created to quickly go and create a new simulation. So in our toolbox, we have our templates, we have our project template, sorry, and in there we have the BAE simulation template. So what you'll notice, we've already started populating some content in the description fields for the learner. So what is demo mode, what is practice mode, so that authors don't need to type this in or copy and paste this in every time, but it's already there. So to reuse that template, it's literally going and copy and going into the correct group where you want to copy or where you want to paste this template to, right click and say paste. Maybe just on a side note, you need to be authoring or you need to have the authoring rights for the folder in order to paste or create a new object. It will not allow you to create new objects if you are not authoring the folder where it needs to be created in. Okay, so I'm going to hit paste, and Enable Now will ask me if I would like to insert this object as a duplicate or as a reference. Okay, so there's quite a big difference between a duplicate and a reference. I'll start with the easy one, a duplicate. So a duplicate is a copy of that template, and it's a standalone object. So it means that you can go and customize or change that object. As a reference, so you can duplicate simulations or objects as a reference to the source object that it came from. So let's say you are creating a PA20 transaction to find and display or learning or teaching learners how to find and display info types. So it's a very generic simulation, but you would like to use that simulation in more than one use case. So you can create the simulation and then duplicate that simulation as a reference in other learning content or other groups of learning content available to learners. So what will then happen if something changes on the system or you add in a note, for example, to that simulation, it will then go and update all the references linked to that primary simulation. So yeah, it will do live changes. So any place where you then go and change that PA20 simulation, it will update all the referenced simulations to that one simulation. So I always advise authors to be very careful when using as a reference, because it might be a simple use case as it's just to display information and it's nothing customized, but as soon as it gets to a customized simulation where you want to show specific information, I would rather go for as a duplicate and not as a reference. Okay. Any questions on as a duplicate or as a reference? Cool. Okay. So I'm going to hit as a duplicate. What we can do now is we can go and enter a new name. So I'm going to call this SAP Enable Now demo. Okay. If this was a translation or going into a specific language, you could go and select the language, or you could say keep the original language. Don't stress too much about web assistant. It's not something that we currently use at BAE. And you would also like to save the object to the server, and you can now hit on OK. It will create a new object and also sync it with the server. Great. And by default, you still have the authoring rights. Okay. So by default, the modes in that simulation, demo mode, it shows you or walks you through the actual simulation. Practice mode allows the user to interact with instructions. Test mode allows the user to interact without instructions. And then concurrent mode, if we would like to deploy desktop assistant in the future, we can then use all the concurrent mode is already there. So it's quite easy to deploy then. Okay. In any of these sub modes, you can actually go and hide a mode. So let's say for this specific simulation, I do not want to have test mode. I'm only going to show the users a demo and a practice mode. Then I am going to hide test mode. And I'm going to hide concurrent mode as well for this example. So you'll see they are grayed out. You can also right click and delete them. But as a practice, we usually just go and hide them because it's easier to unhide than to go and create a new version. Okay. Let's say I have created my simulation and I would now like to change the name. In basic properties, I can now go change the name or update the name. So SAP Enable Now Manager Demo. I can also change the language. I can add in a short description for the users if I want to, and I can change the descriptions as well. And I've got my full word processing tools as well. So both short description and the fuller description gets displayed to the learners. And I can also then go and hide an object if I don't want learners to see the object in the object tree. Okay. So that's from a basic properties perspective. Maybe just to touch on the bottom, context, roles. Context will get populated once we start recording an application. And then roles is a new functionality in Enable Now, which allows you to assign specific roles to a simulation. So, Andrew, I think you mentioned with regards to the flags earlier, you can actually go and set up roles in Enable Now, which will allow users to filter on specific content. So let's say roles you add in specific countries, and you might want to add in specific job titles. So a user can then use a filter in library view or in learner view to go and filter. I would like to say to see UK simulations which are applicable to HR roles, or UK specific simulations which are related to payroll reporting. So you can then go and start specifying those roles or keywords, if that makes sense.
Can I just ask on that? So it's more about the metadata than sort of audience targeting, is that right? It's like an additional filter.
Yeah. So it's metadata that you can go and maintain. So you can go and add in your roles in here, or you can use a external editor to go and populate those roles. So you can either use a text editor or a default HTML editor.
Okay, thank you. And just briefly on what you did there around hiding, do we have the concept of a recycle bin and restore if someone were to accidentally delete content?
Yeah, so if they delete content, maybe let me just quickly jump back into Manager. There's a global trash. In that global trash, it keeps record of everything that was deleted on the system. So from here, you can actually go and restore a object to where it was, or you can go and empty the trash and delete all the trash. Once you've deleted this trash, it's gone.
Great, thank you.
Cool. Okay, so that's basically from the properties section on this side. We can now go into the actual simulation. So this is the simulation editor. From here, you've got your main toolbar, which allows you to save, to change your playback mode, to view your playback mode, sorry, and then to also change your playback mode. So if you would like to edit demo mode, edit practice mode, edit test mode, concurrent mode, and then there's a documentation view as well. Yeah, to toggle your bubble modes, not something that we use, but if you had different bubbles for, let's say, demo mode and for practice mode, you can actually toggle between the bubbles. But at BAE, we set up the enable now that the demo mode is used for the practice mode. So it's one text box that you need to maintain and not two text boxes. Your normal editing tools, and then you get to your record application, re-record application, and some of the macros that you can insert, which I'll run through once we've recorded, and also your documentation export functionalities. Okay. On the left-hand side, you have your steps, very similar to PowerPoint. So what you've created will become in a sequence, and Enable now will display that sequence to the actual learners. So you'll see once we've recorded a simulation, it's a screenshot, then the instruction, then the next screenshot, then the instruction, which is quite important when you are authoring. So let's say, for instance, you would like to display a explanation bubble before an instruction. The explanation bubble needs to be on top of the instruction before the instruction is displayed. But I'll go through that sequence once we've recorded a simulation. Okay, and then on the right-hand side is the properties editor, where you then edit your different properties once you've created them, and the preview is in the middle. So it's not a WYSIWYG editor. You need to change your properties on the right-hand side. Users also have the option to change the view of this layout. So if you would like to have a horizontal layout, it will give you your steps from left to right and your properties at the bottom, or you can change to various of the other layouts available on the system. Unfortunately, you cannot customize your layout. You are stuck with the default Enable Now layout. I preferably prefer the vertical layout. It just makes sense from what users' experiences are with regards to Microsoft PowerPoint or Adobe Illustrator or some of the other authoring tools that we use. So I prefer the vertical layout. Okay, so what you'll notice in the template, we've added in a start step. So the 1 and the 2 relates to steps in the simulation. So we've already added in a start step and a end step. So very important for a simulation, for any simulation, is the two start and end macros. So the start macro has got the little blue play button in. This basically tells Enable Now that a new simulation or a simulation mode is going to start, and it needs to run through the steps. And then very important, at the end, there needs to be a simulation end macro. And that basically tells Enable Now that this simulation mode has ended. If one of these macros are missing, it can create a tracking issue on the system. So it's very important just to make note that those two macros need to be in the system. Okay. Then we have the start simulation link, which is basically the the link at the bottom here, and we have the content that we need to populate within Enable Now. So on the right-hand side, you'll now see your properties starting to appear. By default, if we work on SAP GUI, we use the transaction code and the transaction name, or a description of what is going to happen. So I'm going to just add in a description here, reset a user password in Enable Now. And I can just go ahead and copy this for the demo, for the practice mode, and for the test mode. So that will then update the title of the simulation. And we can now go add in or just populate the description here. So we've got a use this transaction to, and just to add in a general purpose of what the transaction will be used for. If there's a specific scenario to this transaction, like it's a salary increase due to this or this scenario happening, you can go and add in a scenario. And then if this transaction is specific to any roles, you can add in the role names. This is purely for information purposes and not for filtering. Obviously, if there's none of those required, a content author can simply delete that out of the template. So I'm just going to say in this simulation, you will reset a user password. So what we then just require from the users is to copy their little description that they've typed in, and just to update the description for practice mode and for the test mode. Unfortunately, it's not a default display for each of the three modes. You can actually go and specify the descriptions for each of the modes. Does that make sense? Any questions on the setting up the intro page?
So I have one question. This is Zulkifli. So I just want to ask a question. So assuming that I have created my training group under using the UK English, and then later on I want to change it to the Chinese.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Will the Enable Now translate this whatever that you just type in to Chinese automatically?
Yes. Okay. So what the system will do, let's say I would like to duplicate this and translate this to Chinese. Yes, I can. The system will do the translation automatically for you. It will translate default sentences. So let's say click on the OK button, click on the Enter button, click on the Save button. Those default sentences, it will translate for you. Any customized content like explanations or info or tips or remarks or warnings that you add in as an author to the system, those will be translated manually. You can export a context file with those items that need to be translated manually. A translator can translate them for you, and you can import them back into the simulation, and it will update those customized content.
Yeah, I understand now. Okay, thanks.
Perfect. Okay. So maybe just to quickly get to touch on those, in resources, the recording dictionary that I spoke about earlier, which is the BAE Systems one. If I quickly just open up this dictionary just to show you guys what will happen on the back end. So you'll see there's the ID of the specific task within Enable Now, and there's quite a lot of them. And there is the United States English version, or if I go into the UK English version, so you'll see on a click a button, it will actually say click on it will add in the button name and the icon, button, the word to, and you as an author needs to go and complete the sentence. If you would have wanted this to translate to Chinese, you could take either use the default Chinese dictionary already on the system. So you'll see there's the default Chinese dictionary on the system, and it will translate according to click.demo or click.practice. But you can also export this Chinese dictionary and have it translated by a translator and imported back into the system, if that makes sense.
Can we change this value?
Sorry?
Can we change this translation if we want? For example, we found that this is incorrect, then we want to change.
Yes, so you can click on the export as Excel. It will then give you your dictionary as an Excel file. Let's quickly just export this one. So once you've exported it, you can go and change the dictionary as you prefer, and you can then re-upload it again with the changes.
Okay, I understand. Thanks.
Okay. We'll just quickly give this one a sec just to quickly run. So any other questions on the dictionary? Okay, so while this exports, I'm going to take you guys through the content creation process. So just from a best practice recording workflow, and I'll maybe just make this a bit bigger. So I usually advise authors just to go and plan their scenario a bit. So I usually quickly draw out my scenario on a piece of paper or on PowerPoint of what I am actually going to record. I usually do a test run of the transaction that I'm recording to make sure that the test data that I have created or that has been provided actually works. Then once I'm happy with my scenario and my data, I will then go ahead, create my project like we did now. I will then go and prepare my desktop for recording. So as a best practice, it's usually just the application that's open. So let's say SAP GUI is open and Producer. I usually close my Skype, my emails, any other notifications that might pop up, because I have seen client simulations where there are weird emails being displayed as pop-ups when people record simulations. We then go ahead into record application. We select the application that we want to record. We go and define the recording area and click on record. You'll then see the recording bar appear. So the green, if the bar is green, you can continue with the recording. If the bar is red, it's busy capturing info. So you just need to give it a couple of seconds to just finish what it is busy recording. Once you are done recording, we then go and stop the recording, we save the project, and we can continue editing the project. So that's just the basic recording workflow or way of work that we follow when we record applications in Enable Now. Okay, let's quickly see if that dictionary looks like it might have exported. So what you'll see is it exports your entire dictionary for you. All the languages are here on the bottom of the tabs. So as a user now, you can go and customize these sentences. You might just make them a bit bigger. So you can go and customize these sentences. Once you've changed your dictionary, you can then go and re-upload the dictionary into Enable Now and set that as the default dictionary, which will then do the changes. Okay. So that's from a recording dictionary perspective. Any other questions on that?
Yes, Doug. Just a quick one on the screen recording or the application recording. Can you record anything? So you're not limited to something that could be called an application. So I'm just thinking if the scope of this were to expand and you would want to, screen record SharePoint, for example, or something else. Is there any restrictions on that? Can you just literally record your screen?
You can literally record anything. The only difference is, so I'll show it to you guys now when we start recording. There is a application profile, which will pick up. So the application profile looks for the metadata behind the fields. If there is no application profile, you can either use no profile or standard profile. Enable now will try and find metadata behind the fields. If there's nothing available, obviously it will still record an action, but it won't give you, it won't use the recording dictionary to define the action. So where it might be click on the search button, for example, here, it might just say select the object or click the object. So there's a bit of editing behind it afterwards, which you'll need to do if the application does not have an application profile. But yes, you can record anything.
Okay, yep, thank you.
Cool. Maybe just a note on that. If you are recording, let's say, a remote application and you need to log on to Citrix, for example, you cannot record via Citrix. So it won't pick up the application in Citrix. You'll need to run Producer on Citrix and record in Citrix. So you can't have Producer installed on your desktop and then record SAP via Citrix. It will pick up Citrix. So you'll just make a note of that. The Producer needs to be on the remote desktop that you are busy recording the application on. Cool. Okay. So I'm quickly just setting up. I'm going to record something out of Producer for this morning. So once I am ready to record, I'm going to go ahead and click on the record button. It will now ask me what application I would like to record. So let's say I would want to record PowerPoint. It will go ahead and select PowerPoint, and you'll see under the profile, it now recognizes the Microsoft PowerPoint profile. If I click on the drop-down list here, you will actually see that there's an Internet Explorer profile, your Microsoft profiles are there, and then your SAP profiles are there, whichever GUI you are currently using, or if you're using Hybris, C4C, SuccessFactors, UI5 applications, or you can do a quick recording. A quick recording allows you to record a screencast, a video. So at the end of the day, you'll just get a video file. Or if you are using an application that is not supported, you can either use none or you could use the standard profile. Okay, so you'll also notice that in any of the other profiles, let's say SAP, we use the SAP GUI signature, you will not be able to create a video directly. You will first need to record the application and then export a video once the application has been recorded. Where if you do a quick recording, it allows you to record a video as well, simultaneously with the simulation. Okay. So let's go into what we are going to recording. We are going to record Google Chrome, and you'll immediately see that there's no profile, so it picks up a generic web application, which is okay. We'll click on continue. It will resize the SAP Enable Now screen to 1024 by 768, which is the default screen size that we use to create content within Enable Now. And I now have the option to record a region, or I can record the active window, or I can just record the browser content area. So what you'll see now, it actually then cuts out my status bar, or the status bar with my image in. So it cuts out all your tools and everything. It's only the pure content that we are focusing on. So I'm going to go ahead and just browser with content area. I'm just going to go ahead and record that. Any questions on selecting your application, region, active window, and browser content? Fairly straightforward. Okay, so once I'm happy with my recording area, I'm now going to hit record. And you will now see it highlights the browser area that I am currently recording. There is a green bar at the top, which shows me that the application is ready to be recorded. I can now go and pause the application, or I can stop the recording. I can also insert an explanation or a screenshot if I want to while I'm busy recording, but you can also do it afterwards. I prefer doing it afterwards, just to focus on recording the transaction correctly, and then I can also minimize the recording. Okay, so let's go ahead and capture something. So I'm going to click on my application. You'll see the red starts appearing until the green starts again. So I can now go and start working through my simulation. So yes, I would like to edit the password field. Okay, so it doesn't match the password policy. Just quickly update that one. Do you want to pause it for a second just to show you what will happen when we pause? Just quickly busy saving. Okay, so once I've paused, you'll see it turns grey, so I can now go and change whatever I want to. So I'm going to enter a new password, so I don't want that on screen anymore. Once I'm updated, I can now hit record again. So let's quickly just type in, and it's gone a bit slow on me now. You'll see screenshot first, then the steps. So as we spoke about the sequence earlier, it will go ahead and first display the screenshot, then it will display the transaction or the interaction. Sorry. With the interaction, I can move the interaction around on screen. So let's say I would like to have it on top rather than at the bottom, and I can also move around the tail. So I can move the tail to here, or I can change it back to the bottom. I can take the tail away by dragging it to the middle, or I can move the tail up again to add it in for that object. Okay, so I can now go and change my interaction. So let's say in this interaction, I want to change command field to search field. I can go and change the instruction, click on OK, and it will now tell me to go and enter that in the search field. Okay. I can also then go to say, click on the search button. So you'll see it's got the word search and the name of the button or the button icon included. If you do not want to include the word, you can go and switch off the object name. It will now only say click on the search button, or rather you can have the object name and disable the object image. So you can now go for each type of interaction. You can go and find that specific object, or you can switch it off completely. So let's say for this one, we want to use the object name. I can now move that around again, and I can say, great, for this interaction to find the required user. And it will update my instruction. Okay. Any questions on the basic editing? So you can really go and edit what needs to happen, if that makes sense.
Not directly on the editing, but a more broader question that I've just thought
Okay.
of, so just quickly. Are there any simulations on administering Enable Now in the AI work area? I know we have lots of
No.
guidance, but just as a general point, I wondered if we actually have Enable Now simulations.
No. All of those are housed in Info Center. It's a lot more generic than what it'd be in here.
Okay, so in Info Center, we could, for example, if we wanted to remind ourselves how to add a new user, we would be able to find a simulation that would cover that.
Yes, you would.
Okay.
Okay. So let's say, for instance, on my first screen here, I would have wanted to add in a explanation. So I can go ahead and go to insert. So I've now got all my macros. So there's quite a lot of them that we can play around with. Especially on the special macros, there's the start and end simulation if you might have deleted them, the intro page start link, which we've created in the template. There is a text-to-speech function if you would like to use that, but I'm going to focus on interactions and I'm going to insert a explanation. So this provides you with an additional pop-up. You will see that this additional pop-up has got a next button. For explanations, it will not run automatically. A user needs to click the next button to continue with the simulation. So we force the user to acknowledge the actual explanation button. And I can now go and add my text into the explanation button. To reset a password, start by searching for the specific user. Okay. So I can add in my explanation bubble to the learners. Again, I've got a tail. I can point it to whichever side I would like to point it to. So let's say for this one, we'll point it to here and we'll drag it up until the top right here. So that will display first. You can also change the icon relating to that specific explanation. So in this case, it's a information bubble. You've got the option to change it to a remark, a tip, a warning, or you can switch off the icon completely. Okay, so there's a bit of customization that you've got there. So I'll leave mine at info. And we've changed the simulation, happy with that step. On this step, we've got the search button, and we found our user. So click on the password button. I'm just going to update the instruction on this side. Password button to update or to change the user password. As an editor, you basically run through your simulation and go and fill in what a learner needs to know. So I'm quite happy with that. So on this one, okay, so something went wrong here. So what I'm going to do is, let's say I don't want these steps anymore. I can actually go and select them, and I can right click on them and say delete. So it will basically go ahead and delete these steps. And let's say I'm going to re-record this interaction that I have. So I'm going to have my password field open again, and I'm now just going to latch onto my simulation. So continue recording. So again, up until the last step where you've recorded, you now click on record application. Again, select the application that you are going to record. Let's use the standard profile for now, just to show a different view on it. We're again going to record the browser content area. I'm going to click on record. I've got my green bar, so now I'm just going to go and type in my new password. Okay, so JavaScript is being blocked. It's okay, you can record. And now, as Murphy laws would have it, I can't remember what I typed in on the first box. Okay, so you can change around this password field. It won't record everything. It's basically just recording what you are changing in that field. Why did I make that password? Okay, it's fine. I'm just going to click on cancel just to show you what it will record. And then once you are done, again, you can click on stop. And it will basically just continue with what you've recorded. So what you'll see in this instance is I did a drag and drop that interaction, which we won't require. So I'm just going to remove that interaction. And I can now go and again continue through the editing of this simulation until we are done. Okay. In some cases, in applications such as Enable Now, it will display your welcoming or your name at the top. If this is sensitive information, Enable Now actually allows you to block out sensitive information. So if you click on a image, you'll see there's a anonymized screen area icon. If you click on here, you can now go and define an area that you would like to blur out. So let's say, for instance, my username and password, or my username, I do not want the end user to see that. So just grab that again. So I can actually go and blur out sensitive content that I don't want the learners to see, like my username. And then if I click on OK, you'll see that it actually blurs out that part of the screen. So it's just a functionality that is available as well, that you can hide sensitive user content. Any questions on the basic editing? Okay, so once you are done with your editing, just quickly one change that I would like to make on my side. The system also allows you to perform bulk changes. So let's say all your screenshots are the same, like in my case. You can actually go and anonymize all screen areas. So for the previous example, I just anonymized or just blocked out my username on one screen. I can go and do this for all my screens. So if I hit on OK now, you'll actually see that it goes ahead, should have run through. So we just select all of them again. Let's go to Tools, Bulk Changes again, Anonymize Screen Info. Let's just pull that in again. Okay, there we go. So now it will go block out all the screens with that specific user info. Okay, so once I'm done with my simulation, I can now go and test my playback modes. So I can now go hit playback mode in demo. It will launch the simulation like an end user would see it. Just make sure that you undo your pop-ups. Maybe just refresh. So it now takes you through your simulation step by step. Something's wrong there. It's good to just go and see why it doesn't want to play through. Let's try it again. Perfect. So I can now click on play, and it now takes me through my explanation bubble. I need to continue, and the system will now run me through whatever I've recorded and edited. Okay, and I can do the same for my practice mode. So let's say I would like to go and preview my practice mode. I can change my editing mode to practice mode, what you'll notice the difference between demo mode and practice mode. So on demo mode, the bubble sits with a tail next to the object that they need to click. On practice mode, we just give them the instruction. The learner needs to go and figure it out themselves. So if I now go into my demo mode, great. So now it gives me the info button again. I need to go and enter Bertus. It picks up that that's correct, and it takes me to the next instruction that I need to do, which is click on the search button. Okay, if I do something wrong, like I clicked on all active, it will say your action was performed incorrect. Would you like to try again? Would you like to go on to the next step, or would you like to show help? So let's say I would like to see some help. It will then give me a highlight of where I need to click, and I've now got the option to try again. Okay. Any questions on the demo or the practice mode? Okay, so once we are done with the previews, and let's say we've now completely edited the simulation, we can click on the save button. We'll go ahead and save the sim for us, and my Skype control boards. Okay, great. So again, it's got a change to it. So I'm just going to save that object to the server. I'm not going to add a status to it now. So now I know that that simulation that I've recorded is now sitting on the Enable Now server. So that's how I've captured the simulation, and I now want Sonal to go and review the simulation for me. I'm going to go and say finish editing the simulation. I'm going to change the status to it requires QA. I'm going to select, let's say, Sonal as the reviewer. I can add a comment to Sonal to say, hi Sonal, please review, and I can click on finish editing. So what the system will do now is it will submit the authoring tokens back to the Enable Now manager, and it will send Sonal a mail to say that there's an object that requires QA. Okay, so let's say I'm completely done with my group that I've created this morning or worked in. There's no need to go and check in each object individually. I can right click on a group, go to the more functionality option and say finish editing all objects, which will then check in all the objects that we are currently working on. So you'll see all of the objects have now been checked in back into manager. The same when you start editing a group, you can right click on a group, go to more and say start editing all objects, and I can from that group now determine which objects I would like to start editing. So let's say I'm only going to start editing the PA20 transaction, click on OK, and it will only go and pick out those objects that I've selected that I would like to edit. Okay, so you can check out a group and select what objects within that group you would like to edit. Okay, so let's say we are done with Producer and I am wrapped up for my authoring. I'm going to click on the close functionality. What Producer will ask you is, do you want to finish editing the objects before shutdown, or do you want to keep them for offline editing? So if I click on synchronize, it will submit the authoring rights back to manager and then close the application, sorry. And let's say I would like to edit these objects offline. So I want to work from home and I'm necessarily not connected to the BAE network. I can actually keep those sims on my Producer as checked out, and I'll be able to edit them offline. Okay, so I'm just going to hit on synchronize. Cool. So producer closed up. Let's jump back into manager. So once I'm in manager and I go to work areas, what you will notice now is that in Enable Now Training, in the folder that I've created, there is the new content that I've created now. And what you'll see on that task for that project is the entire history for that task. So I started editing the task and I changed the status to the task requires QA, and that task is now sitting with Sonal, and I finished editing. Okay. And you'll also see the status of the object on the panel, as well as who it has been assigned to. So it keeps track of that task that we've created. Any questions on that?
Just to check, Doug, so when you assign something for somebody to review, do they get an email, or is it just all in application alerts?
They get an email. Okay, and then obviously someone can also go ahead and when she logs into Enable Now, she can go into My Tasks, and then tasks that have been assigned to you will be displayed here. But as an administrator, you can also go and view all tasks. So you can go and filter on a specific user to see whose tasks are there. So I can see there's a couple of tasks that have been created. So there's the task that we've created now, who's it assigned to. Okay. And I can actually go and view that object within the manager. And that will take me to that specific object so that I can see what's going on with that object.
Well, thank you.
Cool. Okay, so as a reviewer, you do not need to go and open producer. Someone can log into manager. She can click on the library view, and that will then go and create that specific preview for Sonal, which you can then use to actually review content. So a reviewer does not need to open up producer. They can review directly from manager. So with regards to assigning content, let's say this course is now ready to be assigned, and I'm going to use a different transaction for that. I'm going to use PA20. So let's say this course is now ready to be assigned to learners. On the course tab, we can now go and add in a assignment. So we can add, you can add a caption. So I'm going to call this one display HR master data. Okay, it shows you the object or the group that is assigned. So let's say you wanted to assign the entire course library, you would go create this assignment to learners on the course library group and not on each individual simulation. I can now go and say, okay, who does this need to be assigned to? So I can either assign it to an entire org unit, or I can go to within system and select the learner role. So this will be assigned to all users who have a learner role. Click on OK. I can now determine, do I only want to show the object? So it's only this object. If it was a group, I could go and select, yes, I would like to show the object and all sub-objects, or only objects and sub-objects, or direct sub-objects. By default, we'll use object and sub-objects. Is there any scoring method? Yes, percentage completed, usage counter, or no scoring. So I'm going to use the percentage completed. Learning path, show all modes, and I can give it a weighting, so it's a 100%, and also the pass percentage required for the test mode. Okay, I can also disable mode. So let's say for this one, we only want the demo and the practice mode to be tracked, so we're not tracking any of the other available modes. And then once I am ready, I hit save, and that assignment will be created. You'll currently see that the assignment is in red because this object is not yet published, so it's not available for the end learners to see. Where if we go into the course library, just as an example, you will see this one is not highlighted as red, and the reason for that is this group is currently published. So once you go and publish content, so let's say I want to go and publish this object, I can hit publish. In Learner View, you will see display HR master data is now available in Learner View for users to actually go and consume that content. Okay. So that's basically from a high-level course assignment perspective. And then again, to go and disable that assignment, you can either go into course again, you can go and delete that assignment, or you can simply unpublish the assignment. If you created more than one learner group, so let's say we had specific groups of learners, so HR, payroll, finance, what different groups you would like to create, you can do different assignments. So you can have the HR content assigned to HR learners, the payroll content assigned to payroll learners, and you can go and create an assignment for each of those learners, and it will create a generic link for you, and you can actually go and copy that link and send that out to your learners on a communication, or you can actually embed a QR code which they can scan if they would like to access it via mobile. Okay. So that's very high level from a course creation, course creation and assignment perspective. Any questions on that? Everybody comfortable?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to delete that one just to make sure that nobody sees it. Perfect. Okay, so that basically ends my demo for the creation of content material. I just quickly want to run through some of the questions that you guys go through, and I want to start off with Desktop Assistant. Desktop Assistant, yes, you guys have access to Desktop Assistant. It needs to be installed on every user's PC. So there is a bit of IT whitelisting that needs to happen. I would recommend that we take a look at we can either schedule a session to discuss Desktop Assistant, and I'll also maybe give you guys access to the Desktop Assistant implementation guide, which needs to be installed and configured within a Desktop Assistant to work. Any other specific on Desktop Assistant?
I don't think so, Doug. I think that was my question, so thank you. If you could share that guide, that'd be useful. The sort of future scope of this is obviously slightly unclear from an IT perspective, so it'd just be useful to know what our options are if we were to open up that conversation at a later date.
Perfect. Then obviously we've got the web assistant as well. If you use SuccessFactors or any of the S4HANA applications, you could go ahead and deploy Web Assistant. What is nice about Web Assistant is that you could tap into the SAP SuccessFactors or SAP S4HANA default content as a start, and then you can just customize the content to align it with BAE processes. So it's not starting from scratch, but that's only unfortunately applicable to SF and S4HANA. Okay. There was a question around, and it's not something that I showcased within the demo now of recording content. There was a specific question about, is there any guidance on UAT recording evidence functionality? So yes, I'm going to quickly open up Producer again just to show you what we can do with regards to that. I'm currently working on a client where we are using SAP Enable now to actually UAT and test and train a new system, and it works quite well. So what we did in this use case is the functional consultants creates their capture simulations as part of their final testing to show that they have, or to show that the functionality is working. From that final simulation, we use that simulation to provide evidence. We also use that simulation as part of the training, and we also use that simulation to generate a UAT document, which users then use when they actually use UAT the system from an end user perspective. Okay, so let's say we've captured, I'm just quickly going to jump into my editing of the SAP Enable Now demo mode here. So in your documentation, you now have the option to go and generate a standard document, which is a training document. You can also generate a job help, which is a one-pager document, quick reference card, or you can go ahead and generate a test sheet. So I'm quickly going to generate the test sheet. So what the test sheet will do is it will create a UAT document that allows you to use that in your UAT sessions. So you just wait for it to quickly run.
Just while that's loading, Dirk, that was my question as well around on UAT. I can see a huge amount of potential in this area because we are obviously heavy users as IT of UAT and UAT materials. So this looks really interesting, actually, the way that it can auto generate evidence documents and job aids and things like that. So yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, and you can customize the templates behind it. So I think we've only set up the standard document, but this basically gives you a bit of a description. We can disable this from the template. The data set that you'll require, you can go and customize this as well. It will give you the screen, what you need to do, the action and the instruction, and you can then go and mark off if this was completed or not completed. So I think these are still the SAP default values. I usually go and change these to approved or not approved and delete the other two fields. So you could really go and customize your testing document that you generate for each transaction, if that makes sense.
Yep, it does.
Cool. Okay. Just to maybe show you from a backend perspective, these document templates sit in your work area. Again, everything is housed in SAP Enable Now. So within documentation settings, there is that test sheet template that you can go and customize. Okay. Maybe just while we're on that, from an evidence perspective, it's sometimes difficult to share a simulation as a user needs to log into Enable Now. What you can do is you can go to the Tools option, and you can go and generate a video, and this will generate a step-by-step video of whatever you've created in your simulation. You can choose the sizes or go user defined, and then once you hit on generate video, it will create a quick MP4 video, which you can then distribute to whoever. So it's a file that you can download afterwards. Okay, so that's just maybe from a video perspective. Okay. Maybe just one last thing on the documentation. What you'll notice is it actually adds in the test sheet now as part of your documentation. So any document that you've created will then be part of that that simulation, and users will have access, or learners will have access to that documentation if you choose to keep it visible to the users. So let's say there was a training document and a quick reference card generated. You can actually have or allow learners to actually download that documentation after they've completed the simulation. It will appear within LearnerView. Okay, so it's just as a reinforcement. Okay. And again, if you don't want the document, you can just maybe hit delete. Okay. So another question that we haven't touched on was the process mapping, or the Visio style capabilities of displaying content. So yes, Enable now does have business process capabilities, and we package those in books and book pages. So not something that we've done at BAE before, maybe something we can explore in the future. But a book and book pages basically allow you to create e-learning content, and you can package images, interactions within those books. So I'm just going to show you an example of how to build a process. So this is very similar to creating content as you would in PowerPoint. It gives you a slide, and you can now go and add in various bits of content into your slide. So let's say I would like to go add in text as an example. It gives me a text box, very similar to authoring a PowerPoint presentation. So process map. I can go and change the settings on that process map. Great, let's just keep it there. And what we've got in Enable now is we have a BPM object, so a business process object. I can go add it in here, add my title. So let's say this is step 1, and I can go add a description to that. Perfect. So what this will actually allow me to do now is I can go add a specific role to that process. So let's say this is a HR manager, which needs to complete this functionality. Maybe let's just change the text color on that. I see this block has not been set up. Change the font color to white, and maybe the background. So maybe just another tip: when you start authoring content in Enable now, you'll see that we've already set up the BAE color palette. So I can now go and start customizing this process. So let's go process 2. Go and edit what's going on here. Step 2, and let's say for this one, we would like it to link to a specific simulation. So I can now go and say, right, I want to add in a link, and we are going to link to this PA20 transaction, which is not allowing me to do. Why not? Oh, okay, I can link to a different document. Just add an annotation. So PA20 display info type. And I can add in a link here. So I would like to insert a link. And this needs to go into my work area, and it's going to go to the PA20 transaction that we've created. And you'll see it adds in a little note functionality at the top. We'll go through those now. I can add in various attachments as well. So test attachment. And this can link to basically anything. I can either link to a different piece of content within my work area. I can upload a process document to add in the document. And I can also go to a specific hyperlink if I would like to. So in actions, I could say jump to a hyperlink or go to a specific hyperlink. Yeah, so I can basically link to anything from there. Let's maybe just link to something in the work area. So I click on OK, and you'll see my attachment icon appears, and I can add in about 10 of these attachments. Okay, and let's say I just want to add in a connector, so I can now go and connect these two processes to each other. And then what would happen as soon as I then go and play back, so you can build out your entire process, a learner can then view this process. So a learner can view this process. They can click on the additional information. They can go view the attachments. So on that attachment, if I click on show attachments, I can go to that specific attachment. It will open up in a new window. I can go and view whatever I need to view here, close this one, get back into my process page. Again, navigate to that hyperlink over there, hyperlink to documentation sitting within the BAE SharePoint. So I can then, you can really build out your processes over here. Any questions on that?
Just a quick point from me. So this could be quite timely for us actually, because we are about to decommission the Nimbus business processing tool that we've had in the business for some time, and this looks like it will largely take over from that actually, and it looks like it's got even more functionality. So yeah, it looks really good.
Okay, so are you guys implementing a new business process tool?
No, it's just good to know that this has that functionality available. We've got a few sort of sporadic tools across the business, but no sort of centralized one. It used to be Nimbus, but for all sorts of reasons, we will no longer have that.
Okay, so if you have designed if you have designed your business processes in PowerPoint for some reason, you can actually import PowerPoint slides and then just add your interactivity over the PowerPoint slides if you would like to. So that's an option as well. And then if you use ARIS or Signavio for your business processes, you can actually import and export those business processes into Enable Now. That's the two BPM tools that are supported by Enable Now.
Okay, yeah, that's really good to know. I think it's a real mix for us. I think it would be fair to say we've got Visio, Word, PowerPoint all over the place. So. Okay,
cool. Okay, so that basically wraps up my session. Are there any specific things that or questions from the responses that I sent that you guys would like me to answer? Is there any new questions that came up? We've got about 25 minutes left.
I have a few, if that's okay. I think one of them is a more broad question, but obviously because this is majority IT team that we're looking at today, with regards to sort of ongoing support, does the Enable Now technical support fall under the sort of our existing SAP agreement, or do we have specific Enable Now contacts going forward if we needed to, you know, escalate an issue or get some further advice?
So Sonal, perhaps you can come. Well, I'm not sure what your current support contract with SAP is, and if they do offer SAP Enable Now support as a part of their AMS offering to you guys.
So just to respond to that, then I will ensure that we have an answer for you on that, Andrew. I'll need to speak to Raminder just to confirm as part of our governance of the whole Enable Now project and who will be managing what, who the super users are, etc. That will be something that's covered within that. So I can certainly come back on an FAQ on that.
Brilliant, thank you, Sonal.
Okay.
I've got a few others that probably aren't appropriate now because we're trying to largely focus on functionality. So Sonal, I'll pick up separately if that's okay. I've got about 3 or 4 additional ones.
Yeah.
But one that might be relevant for Dirk as well to advise on. We were provided an export of active users as of, I think, April. I think the document was dated. And I noted that a lot of the people on this call and the IT team weren't included in that. I suppose it's just to ask, what is the current roles and permissions and access for the IT team with Enable Now? I think it was an outdated document we provided.
So
For example,
I
I'm
think
not on
you
there,
got
just to highlight.
still currently only on master author, yeah, master author or author roles. Nobody in IT has been granted administrator roles. So we can maybe just relook that and grant the administrator roles where applicable.
So I can pick up on that with you, Dirk, having spoken to Raminder and IT, sorry, if that's all right. But if you could run a fresh report or show us how you run that report, then at least if anyone needs to run that report to see who the users are, they can easily do that.
Perfect. So basically, when you go into manager, you go onto administration, you go into users, you select the root group, you select all the users, and you click on export. And you run it as an Excel spreadsheet.
Thanks,
And that
Dirk.
basically gives you a export of all the users and what roles they have been assigned on the system. I will send this one to you, Sonal.
Brilliant. I'll forward it on, Andrew. You've got it. Could I also just ask, Dirk, just to show everyone, if we, and you may have covered this in the first session, so excuse me, but could you show us how you, I think it's right there. I've seen it. So I'm just going to say how you add or remove a user.
Perfect. Cool. So you can do the quick add from here. So log in, first name, surname, email address, a initial password, what role the person needs to be. Click on add and the user is created. Or alternatively, you can go through the Excel upload that I showed within the first section or showed in the first session, where you go and do the whole Excel upload.
Brilliant, thank you.
Cool. Maybe just a new functionality that's available. I think it came live on the 1st of June. You'll now notice a home dashboard in Enable Now, and that will basically, depending on your role, show you a bit of content. So on the home, you've now got tasks that have been assigned to you, any new messages, learner view, info center, support, create an incident, your personal settings. If you are an administrator, you can go directly to user import, view your units, your org units, your roles, permissions, server admin, project admin. So this is a brand new feature that came live on the 1st of June, which is quite nice.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dirk.
Okay, so anything else does anybody else have any questions?
I got a couple more. First one is more of a general point, I think, for the benefit of everyone on this call. So if you do have any sort of more program specific queries around, timelines, licenses, and more broad questions, but send them on to someone and myself, and we'll capture them centrally, potentially for outside of this session. One specific question I've just thought of, Dirk, is around patching and sort of upgrades. So does that happen automatically? Is there any level of involvement the IT team need with regards to that going forward?
No. So that gets done by the SAP Enable Now data management team at SAP. They do patching upgrades automatically. I'm not sure who the SAP Enable Now contact or application owner is within BAE. So you can maybe just trace that up. That user will get an email if there is a new upgrade coming in live. And what they will need to do is there's usually a month preview, which allows you to view new functionality. And then before they switch over production to the new version.
Brilliant, thank you. That makes sense. And apologies, I know I'm asking lots of questions. Just a final one, probably from me, maybe for both Dirk and Sonal. What's the status of the KT to the HR and payroll team? So obviously this is probably the final IT specific session we have. There'll be sort of fallout sessions that me and Sonal have, but largely I think it's probably the last one with you, Dirk. What's the status with the HR guys? I know they need more intense sort of hands-on training.
So what we've done is we've created a kind of a super user group, if you like. So Dirk's been through a few sessions of training, similar to what he's gone through with you now, except he hasn't gone into some of the technical detail or the UAT side of things or that kind of process map demo. So largely it is done, so that KT's happened. What we're doing now is the learners that attended the session last week are creating simulations, and what I'll do with Dirk is just set up a separate kind of group session wash up to just make sure that any niggles or outstanding queries are managed. So at the moment, Dirk, this is fresh news for you as well. The HR and payroll team haven't had the opportunity to create any simulations. So Dirk, offline, I'll pick up with you about a wash update. So that's the kind of the roadmap. And then if there are any other sessions that we need to build in, just in terms of queries that the team encounter, then I'll just need to get confirmation from Raminder and Michelle as to exactly how many of those sessions will be planned. But essentially everything is done. Everyone has gone through the very comprehensive training that Dirk's provided. They have access to all of the presentations and slides. So I would envisage that there would only potentially be a maximum of 2 wash-up sessions, and just need to agree on that. You raised the point earlier, Andrew, about ongoing kind of support for IT and for the HR payroll community. So as part of the whole governance of Enable Now, that will just need to be closed out.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sonal. Thank you, Dirk. I promised to stop talking in one moment. I've just thought of another one. Apologies. Can you share with us all the information that's been shared with HR as well, just all that sort of more in-depth guidance, if it's not in an obvious place in Enable Now, just because we are gathering a sort of central resource on this as well. So it would just be useful for us to see what HR have been KT'd.
Perfect. So within Enable Now, on the work area in authoring guidelines, there is actually the HR session that we ran through with the IT session, author training. There's various PowerPoint presentations there, as well as for the IT guys that we ran through. If you then open one of those presentations for the the HR or the authoring guidelines, you will actually see that I have add in the topics and also links to the SAP Enable Now info center if you would like to go and view more content.
Excellent. I'll take it from there then. Thank you.
Perfect. So you'll just see an example of creating a template. Okay, this one doesn't have links in because it's just template creation. But yeah, there are links into to Enable Now, to Info Center.
Thank you. I think that's all from me, all my questions. Thank you. As I said, yourself and Sonal and myself will pick up a few sort of more broad queries offline. Yeah, I'd encourage anyone else to ask any questions.
Hi, Harvey here. I have a question. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. So for the test cases and the videos that were generated, can those be distributed to users that do not have license to enable now?
Yes. So once you've created a video or a specific document, you can then, if we just quickly go into one of these, they should have a document somewhere. So this document you can basically open. It will open in Word, and you can save it, file, save as, and save it to wherever, and you can distribute the document. The same for the video. You can open up the folder location for the video, copy the video, and distribute it. No problem. Okay, does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Any other questions? Okay, so I think then that's a wrap up from my side. Thank you so much for your time, and enjoy the rest of your Friday and the weekend.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dirk. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dirk. Thank you, Sonal. Thanks all.
Thanks
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.